Sourcing Week 2016, all this week on Property Tribes, and I'm joined by landlord and founder of repolist, Anthony Ayton. And in this video, Anthony, we thought we would talk a little bit about deal sourcing from the newbie perspective, because when they come into the marketplace, they're totally overwhelmed with all these different strategies and which area do I go in, and it's very, very hard to know where to start. So do you have any pointers for them?
A couple. I mean, one of the first things I would say, that the first tip I would give you is do your own work. You know, there's no shortcuts. No one's going to give you a brilliant deal for nothing. It just doesn't work like that. So you have to do your own work. The other thing I would say is that, you know, many roads lead to Rome. It's not as though you know that there's one strategy. It has to be London or it has to be Manchester or Birmingham. It's more a question of how diligently you apply whatever strategy it is that you choose. Yeah. So you can make money in a lot of different places, but whatever you choose, do it properly.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking that perhaps start close to home because they know the area, they know kind of rental demand in that area, and even if they just use the local area as a kind of, I suppose, way to learn due diligence and start understanding how to talk to agents, how to start negotiating. It's good to put in that groundwork, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, you know, everybody knows the value of houses in their own street, so you're less likely to be burned in that respect. But I do also accept that a lot of people that are starting out in property, they might not be able to make their first investment in their own area, and then they're going to have to look further afield. But it's one of those things that I think if you do your homework and you do it properly, there is absolutely no excuse for you buying bad deals. So I don't think it matters massively, but if you've got the choice and you've got that sort of money and you can invest in your own town, yeah, obviously do that.
One thing that I always recommend is that, you know, to start off, to kind of choose a niche. It could be a 2 or 3 bed terrace in need of a light refurbishment where there's strong tenant demand. It's not very exciting, but it's low risk. It's a good way to kind of, you know, learn your trade as a landlord and investor. And I think, you know, you've mentioned due diligence, how important it is. What I recommend is that when people get a number of properties to view in an area, maybe look at 5 to 7 in one day, and when you actually start going around and seeing the properties, you really start to see where the value is in the area. And I did this recently in London, and some flats I went to see were absolutely horrendous, and others I could see that they were a much, much better deal. And nothing really beats walking the streets, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other things that I would probably add to that is that too many people, when they're purchasing property, they want to do their due diligence about tenant demand with the person that's selling them the property. Wrong. You know, do those things separately. They are separate jobs. Go onto the internet, call up a couple of agents and say, if I was going to buy a property tomorrow, what's the property you would get rid of most quickly? What's going to fly out the door? And then go shopping for the property. Don't do it the other way around. And, you know, I see a lot of people that will buy a 2-bedroom house in Easington Colliery because it's cheap, and then they find that they're in one of the wrong streets and it's never going to rent in a million years. You know, if you're going to be that kind of landlord that's not refurbishing for sale, you know, the rental demand is doing your due diligence on that is a separate job, and you do that properly and you talk to agents about it.
Such good advice there, Anthony, because I always say find the demand before you create the supply. So it's almost a case of looking at rental comparables and yields first and helping that determine which area you go to. I think...
Sorry, I was going to say, I'll give you an example. When I used to work as a property sourcer, I didn't know a great deal about the city of Hull. But I was offered a portfolio for sale in Hull, so I went up there. I did the thing of walking the streets. I then found an agent who was really, really helpful, and she came back to me and she said, "Look, you know, what we need is 3 to 5 bedroom houses. You know, these 2-bedroom houses are completely pointless. She then gave me a list of postcodes where she was going, well, you know, HU9, that's a place where I need houses right now. And it just made my life so much better in terms of what I was doing. And, you know, and I was able to go back to my clients with confidence and say, this property will rent immediately. And that's what you need to be doing before you go in and buy a house.
And it's interesting that you went to a letting agent because additionally, as well as advising on rental yields, they may well know of a landlord that wants to sell a tenanted property. And she did. And I think it's quite a safe way for a newbie to start to buy a tenanted property.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because they know the rent, they know the actual yield, they know the payment history of the tenant, and they make money from day one of ownership, and they might be able to secure a discount because, as we were talking in the previous video about the trade market, tenanted properties tend to end up in the investor space because they're only really appealing to landlords.
Absolutely. I mean, it will be a condition of every residential mortgage purchase that the property is sold with vacant possession. So it's going to tend to go to the buy-to-let market. And also, you know, the average person doesn't want to buy a house and then wait 2 weeks for somebody to leave, you know. Right. So, that makes absolute sense. So,
how could a newbie investor get the most out of repolist?
In a number of ways. I mean, certainly, if you were looking for properties where you wanted to add value to those properties, we could save you an awful lot of time. So, imagine that you had set aside, say, 5 hours per month to do research on property in your area. And I'm talking about desktop research, not actually going to the area. You're going to look through thousands of properties which aren't relevant to you, you know, which are a complete waste of your time. And what repolist does is we cut that down for you. So if you've decided you want to do a refurbishment, the only properties that you're looking at are properties which require refurbishment. The same vis-a-vis auction properties and cash-only properties and what have you.
Well, that's a great help because it can, as we said before, it can be really overwhelming. And if you have too many options, then you just end up not being able to see the wood for the trees. So niching it down is good.
And also, you know, one of the things that there is no escaping is that buying property is a numbers game and there's a certain amount of work to it. If you research 10 properties online and you view 2 properties, you are going to have access to one kind of deal. If you view 100 properties, if you do research on 100 properties and you view the best 10 or 20 properties, then you, within that 100 properties, statistically, you're likely to have seen the best deals that are out there. Even, you know, whether you have the skill to identify that or not, is something that, you know, that's a matter for you personally, but you will have, you know, they will have crossed your path. Yeah. And so the more properties you see, the wider your net, the better your deal. And what repolist enables you to do, particularly with the search function, is we're going to deliver those deals to you, to your inbox. You go through them. Your 1 hour a week becomes so much more potent because you're leveraging it against a much greater number of properties.